Today, the Supreme Court voted unanimously to uphold a federal law that effectively bans TikTok in the United States if they are not sold to Americans. No U.S. law has ever shut down a popular social media platform, let alone one with more than 170 million users. The ban is now poised to take effect on January 19th. It prohibits U.S. app stores and online hosting services from transacting with TikTok, other platforms owned by its Beijing-based parent firm ByteDance, and any other platform under the control of a foreign adversary and deemed harmful to national security by the U.S. president. Attorney General Merrick Garland released a statement after the ruling, stating the court's decision enables the Justice Department to prevent the Chinese government from weaponizing TikTok to undermine America's national security. Authoritarian regimes should not have unfettered access to millions of American sensitive data. The court's decision affirms that this act protects the national security of the United States in a manner that is consistent with the Constitution. Now, President Biden has announced he's really kicking it forward to Trump folks to take over when it's supposed to be banned on the 19th. He's still president. So then, of course, you got the TikTok CEO is going to be sitting on the stage, Michael, for the inauguration. TikTok is sponsoring one of the inauguration balls. You've got others who are suggesting that they should sell it to Americans. You've got Kevin O'Leary announcing that he's put together a team that will buy TikTok for $20 billion in cash. The Chinese government has said, no, we ain't selling. ByteDance has said they're not selling TikTok. They would rather shut it down than sell it. So there's all kind of drama going on. Then you got all these different stories where people are now racing to what's it called, Red Zone or whatever, another Chinese app. And I'm like, what do you think about the last one? And what I've been saying to people, damn that, go to Fanbase. We should be downloading Fanbase to utilize for black folks to build that thing up, as opposed to building up another Chinese app. Your thoughts about this whole TikTok mess?
Some of us still will not learn. Number one, I think this is going to be a mess for the Trump administration to handle. Remember back in 2020, Donald Trump was for banning TikTok. Now he's against it. He says that, he has about 14 million followers on TikTok. He's a TikTok star now.
No, he actually changed his mind when David Yas, a billionaire, started giving money to his campaign.
Yeah,
that's when he changed his tune.
I'm coming to that also. Well, he did talk about he's a TikTok star, 14 million followers.
Okay, first of all, he's not a TikTok star. So
that's what he said.
Okay, but we speak factually. He ain't a TikTok star. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But then the money started coming in from one of the major shareholders of TikTok, and then he changed his tune, just like he changed his tune on electric vehicles when Elon Musk started investing money in his campaign, things of this nature. So now there is a clause in this law. So also this law passed Congress. It was bipartisan support, because you do have some Republicans who are concerned about national security threats. And dealing with the national security threat is dealing with the communist government of China being able to manipulate algorithms and flood the feeds of TikTok with various stories, various videos that may be sympathetic to one adversary of the U.S. or something like that, and be able to shape the way people think. You have 170 million, over 170 million Americans on TikTok, a lot of youth, a lot of Gen Z, et cetera. So there is in the deal, there is a 90-day clause that states that if there is a buyer for TikTok and there is a written signed agreement, then there's a 90-day pause on actually implementing the ban. But the problem is that the owners of TikTok are saying they're not selling. So, how is this really going to work, and how are you really going to enforce it under a Trump administration? And then Trump is at the same time is saying, he really wants time to try to figure this out, but the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled. So it's going to be interesting how this works out, but I'm shutting down. I have a TikTok account. I don't use it. I'm switching over to Fanbase. I'm not using this. And all the people saying they make money on TikTok and this is your livelihood, switch over to Fanbase. It's one of the fastest growing apps, and is black owned. Switch over to fan base.
Morgan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. One, on the political front, because like y'all are saying, we've seen Trump flip-flop on this, and he's flip-flopping between these couple of factions within the party that we've talked about on the side of big business, big tech, and those that want to really take it down and are interested in things like strong antitrust enforcement. And so, yeah, how this all plays out will be interesting. But just, I think the main takeaway for people, though, like you were saying, Michael, it's better if there's more competition. So right now, TikTok kind of is dominating this one little slice of the social media market. Obviously, Meta, Facebook's a huge player here. But if we have more choices, then we can get better terms from the content. People who are making money off of these platforms, then they can get better terms, more money. But if there's only one game in town, well, they're going to try to give you as little value and make as much for themselves, in addition to all the data concerns and the Chinese government having access to the data. So I think this is good if it happens, and more platforms, the better for us to choose from. And yeah, let's support Black-owned platforms in particular.
Matt?
I don't know yet. I mean, I think there are some pretty major First Amendment implications behind this. I get that when you talk about national security, that's what generally gets the highest level of concern from the Supreme Court, as it should. But when you have 170 million people using it, many of whom have monetized it, it does concern me because it gives the government a level of regulation they've never before had. And I wonder what that means going forward, particularly because some of the reasons regarding, the concern about a communist government fomenting dissension among the ranks of Americans. There are a lot of Americans on YouTube who have videos that are just as, prone to foment dissent, if you will. And to me, it just seems like a very large overreach. Now, I haven't seen all the evidence. I haven't seen every argument, but it seems to me there has to be a more narrowly tailored way to do this than either forcing the app be sold to Americans or, allowing it to continue with certain stipulations. But it seems to me to be very questionable from a First Amendment standpoint. And I know that's what the people who have brought the lawsuit have argued, but that's what I thought when I first saw this. I mean, I don't know. It seems like there needs to be some more tailoring done to make sure that this doesn't infringe upon the rights of 170 million Americans. I mean, that's half of the American populace, essentially, right? What is it, 330 million Americans, a little less than that, who are on this app. So for the government to say that this app has to be sold for national security concerns, especially when data is so pervasive in everything, I'm not sure what the long-term implications of this are yet, but it does concern me.
I'm sorry, TikTok got to go. I don't give a damn if it's 170 million people. Here's the reality. The same folk who on TikTok can go somewhere else. The reality is there are apps who can do it. You could go somewhere else. And so I got no problem with it. And the reality is Americans had better get concerned about the role that Chinese plays when it comes to data and information. I mean, we played the video the other day from Christopher Wray in this interview with 60 Minutes, where he talked about how the Chinese cyber folks have how they have gotten into so many different systems. They've got malware, and with the press of a button, it can impact our water infrastructure, so much telecommunications infrastructure. So I totally understand that. And the reality is, America, you waited too damn long to move. You waited too long to move. And so that's what we're dealing with right now. So you want to make a final comment, Morgan?
I was just going to say, I mean, I don't think we want to think of this as a First Amendment issue.
Right, national security.
That's a longer conversation. But I completely agree with Matthew that we do need to be addressing all of the big tech problems. And hopefully this can help to set the stage for some rethinking of how those markets are structured and the risks that they're presenting to us, both economically, national security, psychologically, and that we can see Congress introduce laws to address that as well on the other platforms.
It was ByteDance making it a First Amendment issue.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course ByteDance is making the First Amendment issue. Because go ahead, Matt.
Let me push back because Morgan just talked in the previous segment about freedom. And I understand national security versus freedom is a balancing question that we have to have. But my concern is, I think the slippery slope with this is if the government then thinks that Roland Martin Unfiltered is a part of something that should be, cordoned off and no longer on the airwaves, then we're basically feeding into the idea that the government can wade into a space to an extent that it never has. And I understand the implications about the national security risk, but the problem with that is that can be attenuated out to the furthest ends, and then you can have not only the First Amendment being infringed upon, but you can have the government now saying that content or certain things that it doesn't like can be regulated. And I don't think that that is necessarily like a conspiratorial approach to looking at this lawsuit in terms of what is being implicated here. The government passed the law to make a business shut down, a business that people were involved in because of concerns about what could happen. That to me seems to be pretty.
But it's not a law to make it shut down. It's a law to change the ownership structure. So
right,
yeah,
because of who it's owned by, because it's owned by an adversary of the U.S. government. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, they're not saying you have to completely shut down TikTok. They're saying, listen, in the United States, there are rules right now preventing foreign ownership of airlines. Richard Branson could not be the majority owner of Virgin Atlantic because he was not a United States citizen. The exact same thing. You've had federal laws preventing foreign entities owning TV stations and things along those lines. So this idea of is not new that prevents foreign government. This is not even in the case of Richard Branson, that's a foreigner who could not be allowed to own Virgin Atlantic. The United States here is saying this is a foreign government that has a massive ownership stake in ByteDance.
That's actually a very compelling point. And I did not realize that we had those regulations regarding common carriers, for instance, like an air. So that makes sense. That's actually a very compelling point. And that puts it into a context I hadn't considered. And obviously not knowing every aspect of the lawsuit, I can't necessarily opine with the full benefit of that. But that makes sense to an extent. But I also think that we have foreigners who have obviously prominent business roles in the country, and we have a visa that allows people to come over that we've talked about on the show ad nauseum. So I think that is an interesting question, but I get it. It's an adversary of the United States, and I understand it from a national security standpoint, but it still concerns me about what kind of government regulation this allows for, and I think that's going to remain to be seen what that's going to turn into down the road.
And for folks who don't realize, when it comes to airlines, foreigners cannot own more than 25% of the stock in an airline. Foreign owners cannot hold more than 25% of a broadcast license in the country. But in this case, this is where they target a foreign government, which is different from a Chinese national or a Japanese national or a Korean national. This is the Chinese government. But this is also something that, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, they should have been addressed before it got 170 million users. But that's just my thoughts there.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. And right now we're accepting investors in our $17 million round to revolutionize the future of social media. Today, for just $399, you can own 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. While the big platforms have grown too massive and disconnected from their users, Fanbase is building a platform where creators and users truly come first. We've already raised $4.8 million from everyday investors who believe in this vision, and now you can join them. This is your chance to invest in a social media tech company with over 1 million users that is disrupting media by allowing anyone to reach all of their following and monetize their content from day one. The market is changing, big platforms are failing to serve their users, and Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now. Invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the future of social media.